17 million people voted for Brexit.
Take back control.
3, 2, 1.
On the 23rd of June 2016, in one of the most consequential decisions in modern British history, 52% of UK voters chose to leave the European Union.
The British people have voted to leave the European Union. Their will must be respected.
The result came after a vigorous campaign, with Boris Johnson urging the public to take back control and Nigel Farage claiming that high immigration had brought Britain to breaking point.
EU membership and uncontrolled immigration are synonymous.
But 10 years after the vote, does the reality measure up to some of the key Brexit promises? The most notorious claim from the campaign was the £350 million a week extra for the NHS.
We can take back control of £350 million a week and spend on our priorities here in this country, including on the National Health Service.
That argument was dodgy from the start. It ignored the money that the UK got back from the EU, and the Statistics Authority called it potentially misleading. 10 years on, we can see that the economic damage caused by Brexit has cost the Treasury much more in lost tax revenues than it saved in payments to Brussels. Experts reckon the economy is about 4 to 8% smaller as a result of Brexit because of lost opportunities for trade and investment. And that has had a knock-on effect on government revenues. If the economy is at the very least 4% smaller, then tax revenues are likely to be about 4% smaller too. Last year, that would have been about £720 million a week, more than twice as much in lost revenues as that £350 million on the side of the bus. As it happens, NHS funding is up since Brexit by much more than £350 million a week. But that has come from raising tax rates, borrowing and squeezing the budgets of other government departments, not from saved EU payments. The slogan,
Take back control,
had a lot to do with immigration. And Brexit certainly did dramatically reduce immigration from the EU. But when we left, Boris Johnson's government chose a pretty relaxed policy, allowing companies to bring in lots of workers from other countries. The Ukrainian refugee scheme and special rights for Hong Kong citizens also boosted the numbers. And after COVID, the government was so worried about the lack of staff in social care that it created a special visa. That was taken up by hundreds of thousands of people. After the numbers rocketed, Conservative ministers tightened the rules. And after Labour came to power, they imposed even tougher restrictions. The latest figures show a sharp fall. Migration in 2025 was down by almost half on a year earlier. So the government has taken back control, but only after allowing migration to rocket. And the debate about migration? If anything, it's more toxic than ever.
Send them home! Send them home!
In 2017, International Trade Secretary Liam Fox promised that a post-Brexit trade deal with the EU
should be the easiest FTA in the history of mankind.
The logic was this: since we already followed all the same rules, it should be simple. Unfortunately, that was not the case. It took 3.5 years of tortuous negotiations to get the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And we saw Theresa May ousted as Conservative Prime Minister along the way. When Boris Johnson took over, we ended up with a hard Brexit, outside the EU single market and unable to allow goods to pass seamlessly across borders. Economists have found the result of that is that trade with the EU has been a lot weaker than it would have been if we were still members. We have done quite a few deals, including with India, Australia and the Gulf states. But the EU has also been busy signing trade deals over the past decade, which we would have been a part of if we were still members. And let's not forget about this.
You cannot sell bananas with abnormal curvature of the fingers.
If you believe the tabloids and Boris Johnson, Brussels had spent decades banning Brits from buying imperfectly curved bananas. It was somewhat true. The EU had regulations determining which bananas could be sold as Class 1. One restriction was that they had to be free from abnormal curvature. But normal bendy bananas were always allowed. You just couldn't sell them as a premium product. So what happened after Brexit? Well, the Conservative government decided that the British public didn't really want to lower their food standards. And businesses still wanted to sell their products into the EU, so were happy to stick to the old standards. In fact, when the government launched its Brexit bonfire of EU regulations in 2023, only 600 of thousands were actually removed. And the banana regulation? It stayed. Before the referendum, David Cameron warned of a decade of uncertainty if the UK voted to leave.
Our economy is slowing because of the huge uncertainty hanging over Britain's economic future.
And 10 years on, the debate about Brexit's impact still continues. But over time, the gap between those Brexit promises and reality has become harder and harder to ignore.